Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Pen Vicarage and also the fascinating and intriguing and exciting book of Joshua. I hope you are well and cheerful. Good to see you this morning, and I hope you're having a good day so far today. Friends, we are, as I say, in the book of Joshua, and today we're in chapter 3. So without further ado, here we go. Joshua and chapter 3. Early in the morning, Joshua rose and set out from Shittim with all the Israelites, and they came to the Jordan. They camped there before crossing over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall go, you shall set out from your place. Follow it, so that you may know where you should go, for you have not passed this way before. There shall be a space between you and it, a distance of about 2,000 cubits. Do not come any nearer to it." Then Joshua said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." To the priests, Joshua said, "Take up the ark of the covenant and pass on in front of the people." So they took up the ark of the covenant and went in front of the people. The Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so they may know that I will be with you as I was with Moses. You are the one who shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant. When you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan." Joshua then said to the Israelites, "Draw near and hear the words of the Lord your God." Joshua said, "By this you shall know that among you is the living God who without fail will drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. The ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is going to pass before you into the Jordan. So now select 12 men from the 12 tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. When the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan of the Jordan flowing from above shall be cut off. They shall stand in a single heap. When the people set out from their tents to cross over the Jordan, the priests bearing the ark of the covenant were in front of the people. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. So when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the edge of the waters flowing from above stood still, rising up in a single heap far off at Adam, the city that is beside Zerethan, while those flowing towards the sea of the Ararat, the Dead Sea, were wholly cut off. Then the people crossed over opposite Jericho. While all Israel were crossing over dry land, the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan until the entire nation finished crossing over the Jordan. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so far in Joshua, chapter 1 is about being God telling Moses had died, and being God telling Joshua that he's the one who's going to lead the people from Aaron, that he's to be bold and be strong and not fear and be courageous, and also that he's supposed to be faithful to God. That's chapter 1. That's the kind of introduction. Chapter 2, yesterday, we had them sending spies into Jericho. And them encountering a very brave lady called Rahab, who helped them and hid them and showed enormous courage and great faith in chapter 2. And in chapter 3, we have them actually crossing over the River Jordan into the Promised Land. The kind of the first foray, if you like, crossing over from what's now you know as Jordan across the Jordan River into Israel itself. And I think it's quite interesting, really, just to make a few points about this, about the way it happened, and kind of a few things about what it means. Firstly, notice what went over first. The Bible is very clear, God is clear, and Joshua commands them that the Ark of the Covenant is to go over first. And they are to leave a gap of 2,000 cubits, which is about 1,000 meters gap between the people and the Ark of the Covenant in front. I think what this really means in particular is that God was going to show them the way, that they were going to be guided not by the military strategy or anything else, but God was going to go ahead of them. And I think by sending the Ark of the Covenant was for them the symbol of the presence of God. And by sending the Ark of the Covenant over first, it was making clear that they were being guided by God. As I say, this wasn't some clever idea. This was God who was going to guide them in what they were going to do. And also, because they were trusting God as well, inside the Ark of the Covenant, you've got things like the Ten Commandments, you had some of some of Aaron's staff, you had some manna from the desert as well. These are all signs where God has worked in the past. And I think for us, actually, particularly at certain times, it's good to remember what God has done for us. So it's great to remember at communion the love of Jesus and what Jesus did for us on the cross and the resurrection and so on. But also in our lives, it's good to remember times in our lives where God has helped us. So at particularly courageous times, and this will have been a very, very brave thing for them to go into the land and do what God said and so on. That having inside this ark, this treasure chest, having these reminders of God's faithfulness, of God's power, of God's love, will be a terrific help to them. So notice firstly that it was like the Ark of the Covenant that went over first. I think this is saying very, very clearly that God is guiding them and that God is going to do the work. So it's quite clear the Ark of the Covenant goes first. As I said, this is going to be God's work and not theirs. They're going to be guided by God in what they do. And having this treasure chest full of reminders of God's faithfulness, reminders of God's power, will be a terrific encouragement as they made this huge step into the promised land. They're also told to consecrate themselves because, as essentially Joshua says, God is going to do something spectacular today. And I think whilst God has a record of dealing with some pretty interesting characters, as he did with Rahab in yesterday's reading, actually it's right, if we know that God is going to, if we're waiting on God particularly, if we think God is going to turn up in a big way, if you know what I mean, making ourselves consecrated is kind of the right thing to do. And consecrating us, in a sense, is an expectation of what we're expecting God to do. And so he says, God is going to do something great today. So consecrate yourselves, make yourselves holy, make sure that you are right with God, make sure you're not doing anything inappropriate. Make sure that you are living holy lives because God is going to turn up and do something spectacular today too. And notice also they're told to give this distance. They're told to stand 2,000 cubits, which is to say it's about a kilometre back. They're supposed to hold away. Again, what's this about? I think firstly making just how clear that it's God who's going to guide them, and that what they've got in front of them is holy. But I think also it's a question of watching God at work, if you see what I mean. I think it's making abundantly clear that this entering into the promised land, they're going to do it, but it's going to be God's work. God is going to be doing it in front of them. So, stand back and watch while God does something amazing. So they're acting in accordance with God's will, but they're to stand back because they're able to watch God's guidance in front of them, but also to recognize that God going ahead shows them it is going to be God's work and he's going to win the land for them. That's really, really important too. Then, of course, it's quite interesting also that they kind of go ahead and they are faithful and they do what God says. And then this miracle happens and they cross the Jordan. And as the priests put their feet in the water's a few miles up the road, up the river, a place called Adam, up the river, the waters get stopped into heap and the waters stop and they cross through and this miracle happens. So they act in faith. They do what God tells them to do. And then God says that they are faithful, they are brave, they are courageous, they do what God says, they are faithful to his word as they were commanded to in chapter 1. And then God works. God stops the waters and they cross over. But I think what's quite interesting also about this is, in a sense, this miracle here is but a foretaste of what is to come. The River Jordan is actually not a very big river, and nowadays it's more of a brook because lots of water's taken out upstream. It's quite small now, and it was obviously a bigger river in those days. But still, as miracles go, this is not a particularly big one. Yeah, okay, I'm not undermining it, but as miracles go, compared to some of the things that were about to happen in the next 2 or 3 chapters, it's a relatively small miracle. I mean, much bigger are things to come, like conquering Jericho and things like that, are much, much bigger miracles in the next few chapters. And I think in a sense, though, what this is about is really, I mean, God could have found them somewhere else to cross or I don't know what. But actually, I think what this is about is, they show faithfulness. God does this miracle and they cross over. And in a sense, what they're showing is that God is with them. God is with Joshua. Follow him. This is going to happen. And if you like, this relatively small miracle in crossing the River Jordan is but a foretaste of God's amazing faithfulness and the really spectacular things that God has yet to do. And I think, in a sense, you could argue it's almost like a bit of training. This is, trust in me, says God, and I'll do greater things with you. As a former American president once said, you ain't seen nothing yet. So this is a relatively small miracle, but bigger things are to come. But trust in me, I am with you. I'm with Joshua. I will guide you. I'll be with you. And trust me. And you can trust me now in this, but you could also trust me in big things that are to come too. And so with that in mind, they cross over and everyone gets over safely and all is good. So lots to say in this chapter of the people of God going across the River Jordan into the promised land. And all about the Ark of the Covenant goes first to demonstrate that it is God who's going to guide them. It's going to be God's work. And the Ark reminds them of God's faithfulness in the past. And likewise with us, we need to remember that actually everything we do as God's people, as God's church, it's God's at work. God is at work amongst us. It is his work, not ours. It's good also to remind ourselves of times in the past and have things that remind us of God's remarkable faithfulness in the past. They consecrated themselves because they knew God was going to turn and do something spectacular, and so should we. If we're expecting God to do great things, we should consecrate ourselves too. They stood back, as should we, and especially things like Sabbath, the importance of the Sabbath principle, looking back and remembering that it is God's work, where he is incredibly holy, and he is going to, any work that's done ultimately is done by him. But that also they did what God said. God did the miracle, but this is the foretaste for them of things to come. And actually the training of life tells us that if God's faithful with us now, God will continue to be faithful with us in the future. And God can and God does do amazing things with us. He commands. We have to be faithful. We have to show faith and we have to trust. And with that, the power that raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that's in us today. God is faithful and he will do. And he did then and he does now. Friends, have a lovely weekend. Do join us at church. We'd absolutely love to see you over the weekend. We have our annual general meeting and our Sunday morning service, so you can find out what's going on and what we're all about and so on. God bless you. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely weekend. God bless and enjoy your Friday.